he's almost made money or getting money a value, because he's never going to have enough. He's always going to be chasing more. He's always going to be moving in that direction. That is always going to direct his behavioural choices. And that's not going to end well. And sometimes maybe the reasons for those wars and targets are overly exaggerated to us, the public, by people with an interest in selling weapons. Surprised he didn't move into big pharma. There's questionable morals and values at play there. It really makes you stop and think, doesn't it? Think about all of those arbitrary rules that we've just made up for ourselves. Or, I guess, a very few people have made up for the rest of us, and we are expected to follow. Hi and welcome back. Stuart here with another Ren reaction through the eyes of a psychotherapist. Please consider checking out my other channel. It's called Therapy in Action. It's slowly growing. There's going to be ways to manage mental health, to overcome anxiety and trauma, discussions about what therapy is like, what it looks like, how you can go about knowing if you're ready to access therapy, if you're on a waiting list, thinking about what you could do whilst you wait. Loads of things going on there. And I want to try and build that into a community. So I base the video ideas off of what you want and what you suggest to me. So please check that out. If you like the sound of that, if you like what's on there already, then please consider subscribing, because that lets me know that what I'm putting out is helpful for people. Right, so we have Money Game Part 3 by Ren. This is the first time I have seen this, so please remember these are just my very initial impressions and first thoughts. So what you're going to get is what is going through my mind in that moment. Okay, it's not a deep analysis or a deep reflection or anything like that. It's just initial impressions. I can't catch everything. So let's just go. I mean, what a start to the track. What a build up. It's not often you get music videos where the actual track doesn't start until 1:43 into the video. That's a testament, I think, of how rounded Ren's artistic skill is. And I'm not commenting much yet, as I want to get a better feel for what is going on. I'm not really sure about the hoods and the noose just yet. I didn't notice how he approached the mirror, like with intrigue and curiosity, perhaps an awareness that there was, in fact, he had seen that there was actually a hood over his head. And once he had seen that and how that hood was kept on, he was able to take it off and reveal himself. Like he's just realized there's actually a hood or a mask or something there. Ooh.
Let me tell you a story about a boy named Jimmy. 1 year old and his first words were mine, mine, gimme. 2 years old he was walking, 3 years old walking quickly. 4 years old he was running round the pavements of his city. 5 years old and his daddy told him, listen here son, you gotta learn to be a man. A man, he works for what he wants.
Okay, so cool. So he's going through the ages of someone and what has happened to them at each age. So how they're growing up, their development, what they're being told. So let's just go back again to those first few years just to catch, now that I know what's going on, catch some of this again. It's about here.
Let me tell you a story about a boy named Jimmy. 1 year old and his first words were mine, mine, gimme. 2 years old he was walking, 3 years old walking quickly. 4 years old he was running round the pavements of his city. 5 years old.
Okay, so 1 year old, first words, and I'm going to take this somewhat literally that these were actually his first words, you know, and they weren't the usual mama or dada, or sometimes it's something like no or bye-bye. You know, things that are perhaps often said frequently in the environment or directly to the child. But Jimmy's were mine, mine, gimme. Mine, mine, gimme. What was happening in that environment for those to be the first words? And then year 2, we got walking. Year 3, walking quickly, all fine. 4, beginning to run.
4 years old he was running round the pavements of his city. 5 years old and his daddy told him, listen here son, you gotta learn to be a man. A man, he works for what he wants. 6 years old and he's reading right.
You see that little subtle look at dad when he said man, man, that look like that. I heard you. Now imagine that being the message you get as a 5-year-old. At the time when a person is working out what the world is all about, what other people are all about, and where they themselves fit in within that and their, you know, self-concept and identity. At a time when neuroplasticity is at its most active. Neuroplasticity being the way the brain reorganizes itself in response to its learning from the environment, which includes what it's being told by the parent or the caregiver. So if you think of that learning that is taking place here, you could call it a template of what the world is like. You know, that message is, you've got to be a man. And what a man does is he works for what he wants. And I guess at face value, this doesn't seem too damaging. You know, there could be a hard work message in there. Hard work gets you what you want. But there's something about this, you've got to be a man. So there's a rule there being made about having to be a man. You have to be a man. And then working out what that means. You know, how do I become a man? And we can guess here that this wasn't a one-off message that was given. I would guess this is just an example of a much longer and enduring narrative that was being built up over the years. So that neuroplasticity, those neurons, you know, what's that phrase? What fires together, wires together.
To be a man. A man, he works for what he wants. 6 years old and he's reading, writing, top of the bunch. And when he's 7, his progression made him student number 1. 8 years old and he's praised for unusual grades. 9, his parents paid for private school to nurture the flame. 10, 11, 12, 13, he ascends and ascends. His daddy tells him, son, money is the means to all ends. 4.
Okay, so it sounds like Jimmy's smart. In fact, he's really smart. And he's getting smarter. That's being nurtured. But why is that? Why is he so smart? Is it because of that previous message? You have to work for what you want. I'm going to have to make some assumptions here, perhaps some leaps here. I can't explore every possibility, so please bear that in mind. But is he working hard? Is he possibly or probably overachieving? Maybe it doesn't come easy for him, so he's spending all day and night learning and revising, kind of neglecting other things that he could be doing at that age. And he gets all of that working, revising pays off. He gets to be the number one student, which is praise that just reinforces that behavior. But that can lead to things like perfectionism. That can lead to physical burnout just because of the time and the practicalities and the energy used to study. Maybe that's not the case. Maybe he's neurodiverse and can naturally remember a lot of information and recall it for exams and tests. And actually this comes relatively easy for him. But again, that puts him in a very vulnerable situation. Okay, let's carry on.
In a sense, his daddy tells him, son, money is the means to all ends. 14, solving complex mathematical equations of...
I'm not going to keep stopping it every kind of 2 seconds, but that bit seemed really important there. That message from dad being, so you have to be a man, and a man works for what he wants. And then there's the message of money is the means to all end. So essentially, you have to work hard to get what you want, to be a man. And the thing that you really want is money. So that should be the focus of working hard, to get that end result of money. So I can see now how this is beginning to shape up to be part of the Money Game series, with Money Game 1 and Money Game 2. This narrative moving toward making money and profit at all costs, because it's woven into the identity and self-concept of this person. And that's going to be the story here, I think. I think that's the story of this song.
The means to all ends. 14, solving complex mathematical equations. At 15, IQ 150, still elevating. 16, he develops complex software code that detects weaknesses in cybersecurity protocols. 17, and he sells his vision, keeping the share. Not yet an adult, but he's practically a millionaire. 8.
See that reinforcement there of the money? Ren physically giving it to him on the table. And he's 17, he's become very good at coding, good at cybersecurity. He sells a service which pretty much makes him a millionaire. So again, that external positive reinforcement for this behavior, so that behavior is likely to just continue.
Keeping the share, not yet an adult, but he's practically a millionaire. 18, and his daddy tells him, now you're a man. This world don't give a damn about you, so take all that you can. 19, he turns a profit, stocks and shares, investing.
Okay, so that's interesting. He says, now you are a man. And that coincides with him turning 18. So is he now a man because he turns 18, which is the legal definition of becoming an adult? Or is he now a man because he's made $1 million? When we consider the message was to make money, and generally speaking, $1 million is generally accepted a nice round number as being a lot of money. He's now made that, so does that now make him a man?
About you, so take all that you can. 19, he turns a profit, stocks and shares, invest in product. 20, double down deposits. 21, his income rockets. 22, he learns the truth is just an obstacle to wealth. If you manipulate the data, then the lie will sell itself. 23, a lie.
Let's just take a moment as well to acknowledge how articulate Ren is. So he's fitting all of this information into each year, which is really cool, but he's making it really clear of the narrative and what's going on. But there's for me especially, there's like a clarity to it. So the pace and the rhythm and the clarity of his voice is allowing me to hear exactly what's going on. I'm not really struggling to understand what he's saying, which I sometimes do on tracks. So where are we? We're at, what did he say? We're at 22, and he's learned that the truth is just an obstacle to wealth. So this is perhaps a tipping point here. A point when perhaps wealth becomes more important than honesty and truth. And people have to start deciding what their values are and what kind of person they actually want to be in the world and what they're going to prioritize. And given the early template and narrative from Dad and the positive reinforcements he's receiving for his behavior and its kind of consequence of getting money, it seems highly likely that the priority is going to be money. That's just what's going to be prioritized here over all else. And again, he's getting that message reinforced by Dad each time.
To wealth. If you manipulate the data, then the lie will sell itself. 23, a life of luxury, crystal and cocaine. 24, he makes the Forbes list, they're applauding his name. 25, and his daddy tells him, listen here son, while you're sitting in that palace, that don't mean that you won. 26.
That manipulating the data line are just going through my head reminded me of Money Game 2, I think it was, when he's talking about manipulating the demand for shells. Manipulating the data for that increasing the desire and want for it, and pretending that shells are really scarce so they can inflate the prices. And Dad's still saying, even though you have all of this, you're a millionaire, you're on the Forbes list, you're in the public eye. It's not enough. Go and get more. And he says you haven't won, which I find really interesting. Because I think that brings up the difference between values and goals. Goals being something that can be achieved. I want to make £1 million. That can be achieved, and it has been. Whereas values are being a direction you can move in but never complete. A value might be honesty. I want to be honest. You can't complete being honest. It's a direction that you move in, and your behavior continuously reflects that. But in this case, he has the impossible task of continuously trying to get more and more money. He can never complete getting money. So he's almost made money or getting money a value, because he's never going to have enough. He's always going to be chasing more. He's always going to be moving in that direction. That is always going to direct his behavioural choices. And that's not going to end well. And there's a connection between you haven't won with all of this being called the money game. So it's all a game. You've only won when you have all of the money. Okay.
Listen here, son, while you're sitting in that palace, that don't mean that you won. 26, a business shift, he switches business to arms. He's 27, dealing nuclear and shells in Iran. 28, inside the Senate, money bought him a seat. He's 29, a role of counsel in the president's suite.
So he's getting higher and higher positions. And let's not gloss over that he moved into the arms game. Surprised he didn't move into big pharma. There's questionable morals and values at play there. And generally speaking, what do people want who are in the arms game? They want wars. They want targets that need to be struck. And sometimes maybe the reasons for those wars and targets are overly exaggerated to us, the public, by people with an interest in selling weapons, or perhaps with shares in weapons tech, weapons company. I think a few lines ago, Ren just said, manipulate the data. Always look at where the money flows. It's what I tend to take a look at if I can. So many people are into the war game. And I've only just started taking a bit of a closer look at this. But I don't know too much about this, so please take this with a pinch of salt and take a look for yourself. But I've seen articles quite recently about some of the big organizations like Spotify, like Amazon, like Microsoft, all having these military contracts. It's mega money involved. And these companies, these people who are running these companies just want more and more and more and more at whatever cost.
Money bought him a seat. He's 29, a role of counsel in the president's suite. Now he's 30. His daddy says you're losing the race. You're just a servant to the king, not even in second place. 31, a big maneuver for his daddy's approval. Moving imports over borders from the exports out of Cuba. 32.
Oh, looks like there's some drugs appearing there on the screen. I just need to check my camera. I've got this nagging thought that I haven't pressed record. Oh, phew. I have. So he's 30 years old. Dad's message is you still haven't won. And not only haven't you won, you're actually falling back. So I think, and I'm choosing my words carefully here because I sometimes get this muddled up, and a lot of people do, to be fair, that this is positive punishment. So an aversive stimulus is being used to decrease a behaviour. You know, the aversive stimulus is dad's disapproval, and it is being used to decrease the behaviour of falling behind. Might have got some of the words muddled up there. I'm sure there'll be some behavioural analysts listening who's going to jump into the comments and say, Stu, that's the wrong use of that term. You know, this can get a bit confusing as we have these terms like reinforcement and punishment. You know, reinforcement being a behaviour that increases, and punishment being when a behaviour decreases. And within them, we have, to confuse matters more, positive and negative. You know, positive being a stimulus is added, and negative being a stimulus is taken away or removed. So with these combinations, we have positive reinforcement, positive punishment, negative reinforcement, and negative punishment. Go away and look it up if you want to know more about that. Or I'm sure some BAs will hammer me in the comments about this. And also, whilst I think of this, there was that line about being a servant to the king. So there's a suggestion there about not only money, but of power. You know, that's quite a two ends of a spectrum there. A servant and a king. You know, the servant who is pretty low, and the king who's about as far away from the servant as you can get. So it sounds like this message is changing now. It was all about money, but now power is being added into the mix. And why? Like, what's the function for dad to be giving this message? You know, what's dad getting out of this? I'm guessing it's, surprise, surprise, him getting more money, and if not actual physical money, then the benefits of having a son with lots of money. And dad wants more. He wants more money. So he tells his son to go and work harder, get more. And thinking about that, why is dad like that to begin with? How was dad treated? What was dad's template? Is there an element of transgenerational trauma here? Got to keep all of these things in mind, how these messages move down, how, yeah. I'm rambling.
His approval, moving imports over borders from the exports out of Cuba. 32, moving grams, growing kilos to tons. He's 33, filling warehouses with powder and guns. 34, turf war with nobody to stop it. Blind eye from the po-po inside of his pocket.
Look at that globe just spinning. Every villain seems to have a globe. So it sounds like he's moving into gangster territory, gangster trade, you know, big money, big power, especially when you're bribing the police. And then we just heard the phone ring. And I know I made the joke about the globe, but is there a representation there of the world that he is taking over?
Inside of his pocket. 35, he gets the call. I'm sorry, son, but it's your father. Had a heart attack, I'm sorry, he's gone. 36, getting pissed off, abusing his product. 37, eyes glazed, disposition demonic. 38, with a prostitute, a moment of passion. Heating up a silver spoon and then chasing the dragon. 39, getting reckless and hungry for power. Daddy's words are still driving him to kill and devour. Makes a move against the cartel, but the strategy's flawed. They retaliate and leave.
Okay, a lot going on. So his dad's died from a heart attack, and he obviously doesn't take that very well. He turns to drink, he turns to drugs, he turns to prostitutes as ways to cope. You know, how has that become his coping strategy? Maybe up to this point, he hasn't had to deal with something like this. He hasn't had the need to learn to cope any other way. You know, maybe because his dad has always been there, kind of looking out for him, but maybe not for his interest, but for the wider money plan. Perhaps he's been able to throw money at problems before, and that's how he's dealt with them. Perhaps he's just been lucky and hasn't suffered any serious loss before this point. So he hasn't really had any close social connections to lose before. You know, maybe he just really had his dad there. There's loads of what ifs there. He has probably learned, though, that alcohol makes him feel good in the short term, and drugs take away the pain, and prostitution gives him some sort of superficial, intimate connection with another person. But none of those things are going to help him in the long term. You know, that is just going to be a path to self-destruction.
Makes a move against the cartel, but the strategy's flawed. They retaliate and leave him in a hospital ward. A bullet buried in his vertebra and one in his leg. The doctor sighs and says, I don't think you'll be walking again. Fuck.
Ooh. We know he is intellectual, but some of those coping strategies very likely had an impact on his decision making. Remembering what his dad had told him, that message still repeating in his head. And because of that, he made really poor decisions. And the end result is, it seems, is he's been shot and he's lost the use of his legs. Oh, what a cool looking scene. This wheelchair is bringing me back memories of High Ren. Is that done purposely? Is it purposely structured this way? It's got to be, right? Ren always does things like this.
Let me tell you a story about a boy named Jimmy. He was 40 and he cursed the words, mine, mine, gimme. 41 he wasn't walking, 42 not walking quickly, 43 never running round the pavements of his city, 44 inside a palace with a mountain of gold. But those riches turn to rubble when perspective evolves. Weighing heavy on his conscience is the...
What a beautiful strings coming in there. And I love how he has tied this in with the words from the beginning, you know, cursing the words, mine, mine, gimme, not walking anymore, like not even metaphorically, just physically not walking anymore, running anymore.
His turn to rubble when perspective evolves. Weighing heavy on his conscience is the value of gold. Lamborghini for a life, trading money for souls. Jimmy followed the code.
I adore that line, those riches turn to rubble when perspective evolves. That evolution of perspective when something big happens, a serious illness, a loved one passes away, something that makes you reevaluate what is really important to you.
Lamborghini for a life, trading money for souls. Jimmy followed the code inside the land of the free. Put your hand inside the cookie jar, take more than you need. And his example is exaggerated versions of me. And it's a version of him, and it's a version of she, and it's a version of you. There's no escaping the blame. The way we live is parasitic. Fuck the money and fame. Cut the music.
That feels like a bit like the point the finger at yourself, which I think he said in one of the other tracks, or he said, look, take a look at yourself in the mirror or something like that, where he's essentially saying that to some degree we are all part of this. We are all part of this game.
The way we live is parasitic. Fuck the money and fame. Cut the music. This isn't entertainment. This is real life. The way we live is lunacy, community, it declines. Hyperpolarized, always fighting, then we divide. Truth is less important than the money that we designed. Money's an invention. Politics from our invention. They all come from people's ideas. Did I mention? Border's an invention. Law and order fuel the tension. It leads to people killing each other. My solution? Everything is subject to change. We could build utopias if individuals were taught to use their brains. But if we teach kids in schools to always be sheep and put themselves before the herd if there's more money for me, then there's no future I see where the humans survive. We're parasites inside a petri dish with cannibal minds. Mold will grow upon the surface and consume till it dies. And our fate could be the same without this story to the wise.
So it seems like, without going through that line by line, that what Ren is suggesting, and that what I would agree with, it seems really obvious, is that we come together as a species and together as communities. And he spoke about artificial social constructs we have created for ourselves, that people in power have created things like borders, arbitrary lines on a map of territories that cause all kinds of conflict. And it's not just global international borders, there's conflicts over postcodes or zip codes. How did that become a thing? It really makes you stop and think, doesn't it? Think about all of those arbitrary rules that we've just made up for ourselves. Or I guess a very few people have made up for the rest of us and we are expected to follow. And even in schools, children are taught to follow the rules, otherwise they are punished for all intents and purposes. And I obviously can't speak to all schools, but I can speak to a lot of the schools who the children I work with have gone to. If you can't sit still in a classroom for whatever reason, be that because there's trauma reminders there and you are becoming hyper or hyper aroused, coming out of a window of tolerance, be that because there is neurodivergence, then that is really hard for that child, because the reality is there's very few alternative options. And we need to consider what is being taught in schools. What is the priority? Here in the UK, is it getting good grades? Is it getting good SATs? Is it getting good GCSEs? Are those the metrics and the outcomes that measure, that actually matter? Are schools essentially a business? Or should the outcome be something about fostering community, working together, learning skills that might be more useful in day-to-day life? There's that proverb, I'm not sure proverb is the right word, that it takes a village to raise a child, i.e. a sense of community. And I don't think there's anything wrong with children being competitive or children wanting to improve themselves and do the best that they can. But there's a balance there. It shouldn't be so hyper competitive that children become ill because they are pushing themselves so hard, or children are using any means that they can to get ahead. And by that I mean putting other children down, lying, manipulating, cheating. I don't know if what I'm explaining, I don't think I'm explaining this very well, to be honest, but hopefully you get the point of what I'm trying to say.
"45. Jimmy comes home out of the rain, soaking wet upon a wheelchair, drinking again. He is everything he wants. He is fortune and fame.
The rain is making me think of the rain, rain, rain lines that come from Money Game 1 and I think Money Game 2. In those songs, rain, 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 like rain with cash. I don't know why I did this. I think this is what people do. Or rain, 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 like a king reigns over people, so power. Or rain, 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 like actual rain because there's a storm coming. But this seems to denote a storm coming, or a storm has come, maybe for Jimmy here, or maybe it denotes a storm is coming for the rest of us. Let me tell you, it'll be a real storm.
Drinking again. He is everything he wants. He is fortune and fame. He's a fortunate fool with an unfortunate fate. With a 45 caliber aimed at his brain. 45 a fitting number cause his age is the same. Here's the words of his father. It's such a damn shame. Then he presses on the trigger of a money game.
Oh, the apprehension. Wow. 9 minutes 19. What a track. He's done it again. A true artist, a true masterpiece. So entertaining. Another fantastic video that looked as if it was done in one take. There's so many elements that you don't want to screw up if it is done in one take. There's the rain, there were smoke going off at some point, the camera was shifting around all over the place. So much truth to the message. This was like an origin story of how people become like this. Some empathy developed early on with a child who was pushed and pushed and pushed. Those people we see playing the game these days, they weren't just created like that. They were shaped by many things. They were shaped by evolution. They were shaped by genetics and epigenetics. There were behavioural reinforcements going on. There were people that they were attached to reinforcing it. There were cultural factors. There was learning history. And I really like in this track that we get to see a whole life cycle played out. I guess there would be an alternative where Jimmy had his own child and then treated the child the same way that he had been treated to continue that cycle. So like I said earlier, that makes you think about what had Jimmy's dad been through and experienced himself in order for him to bring up Jimmy the way that he did. Right, that's enough from me. If you have made it this far into this video, well done. Thank you. Thanks for watching. Take care. Goodbye.